أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقهوا قولي ربي زدني علما. So the last time we spoke about Prophet Ibrahim alayhi salam, or Abraham, and we covered that story in 2 classes. So there was a lot that we talked about, and then we said we're going to talk further about him in other prophet stories as well. Maybe he'll be mentioned, maybe he's going to, his journey after he left his people. We're going to talk about that. So part of Ibrahim alayhi salam's story was that he left his people after nobody accepted his message, with 2 people actually. So one of them was a woman named Sarah, who he later married and had basically the woman a woman named Sarah, who he married, and then later he married another woman, Hajar or Hajra, who he had sons from. Another person who accompanied him before he left his people was Lot, or Lut alayhi salam, who later became a prophet. And from narrations, we know that he wasn't just one of the people that he was sent to, but he was also his nephew. So who was Lot, and how did his story continue from after he left the people of Ibrahim and Islam? So we're going to talk about that today. Okay. So the description of the people of Sodom. So Prophet Lut alayhi salam, or Lot, was sent to the people of Sodom and Gomorrah as well. So there were 2 cities. One was called Sodom and the other was called Gomorrah, and we're going to be talking about both. The word Sodom actually is mentioned here, and we'll find out why. So Prophet Abraham left Egypt, accompanied by his nephew Lut, who then went to the city of Sodom, or Sadum, which was on the western shore of the Dead Sea, which is currently now part of modern-day Israel. Okay. This city was filled with evil. Its residents waylaid, robbed, and killed travelers. Another common evil among them was that men had sex with men instead of with women. This unnatural act later became known as sodomy, after the city of Sodom. It was practiced openly and unashamedly. So basically, what this means is that these people were into homosexuality, and this was a crime that had never been committed before these people. So these people weren't just into this evil act; they were actually robbers too, and they were very aggressive people. Basically, they used to loot, caravans passing by on highways and streets, and these people didn't have morality. And part of not having that, morality was, it basically resulted in them going against nature. So from from Adam alayhi salam's time, we know that Allah created a woman for Adam, or Adam alayhi salam, Eve or Hawa, and we talked about how he needed companionship, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala made a human of the opposite sex for him to find comfort and tranquility in. And this had been the norm since Adam alayhi salam until Lut alayhi salam, where man was to be with a woman. But from Prophet Lut alayhi salam's story, we know that these were the first of the people to transgress that and basically go against that natural order that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created from Adam alayhi salam's time. So these people did procreate, but for their desires, they went to men instead of women. So before we start talking about the people of Lut alayhi salam, we need to know our own, we need to, reassess our perception of homosexuality and why, because, it didn't end after Lut salam's time, even though in the end we know that these people were punished. In today's time, in our world, and especially where we live, we see homosexuality prevail in our society, and also, being supported and advocated for. And we, as Muslims, basically do not believe in homosexuality or acts of homosexuality, basically acting upon that desire, and why it is wrong to act upon a desire on that desire. Basically, people argue that it's a personal matter, or it doesn't hurt anyone, or it's in you need to leave people to live on their own, basically make their own decisions. But in Islam, we are told that there's a right and wrong, and why we believe that we should preach for the right and stop the wrong from being you know from people acting upon the wrong. So this is a very short clip. I'll play it for you, and we'll basically sort of set the narrative from here, and then go on to talk about the people of Lut alayhis salam.
For rent anymore. Millions of lives have been affected by some guy's what? Feeling. This is an example of hukmul jahiliyyah. Is that what they're pursuing? That's what they're pursuing? Just make big decisions based on a whim? Based on nothing but whim, subhanallah? What kind of damage you can do in society? Then of course you have in the world of in what's happening in the United States. This is the scariest thing. Now counselors are being told that if a young person comes to you and says, I think I'm homosexual, then you're not supposed to tell them there may be something wrong with that. You're not allowed. You can lose your counseling license. So if you want to be a psychiatrist, a therapist, etc., you have to say you're entitled to your feelings. If you're having that feeling, that must be a good thing. You should live by those feelings. And that's the only way you'll ever get happiness, is you do whatever you feel. Because of course, our constitution and our way of thinking is life, liberty, and the pursuit of what? The pursuit of happiness. You should be able to do what you want. I would argue, really? You should be able to do what you want? And people have feelings all the time. I feel like slapping people all the time. How many crazy thoughts go through a teenage boy's mind? How many feelings go through his mind? You're saying he has a right to act on all of his feelings? There are no restraints? Isn't that the most insane worldview? You should be able to do whatever you feel like? If everybody started doing that, what would we be left with? We'd be left with utter chaos. The entire idea of aql is what? Restraint. There are some things you have to hold back. You might have a feeling, but it's not a good idea to act on it. It's not good for you and it's not good for someone else. There has to be some restraint. That's the idea of hukmul jahiliyyah. The rule, decision making, a thought process that is based on no restraints. Just feeling. And by the way, that is the kind of
Okay.
for rent and
So basically, this is what the problem or the disease in these people were, that they used to act upon desire. There's a lot of things that a person might desire, and that's why we say they transgress, meaning they go beyond what's normal or natural or was supposed to be part of nature, just because they desire so. And there's a lot of things in today's world that basically follow the same sort of order when it comes to transgressing. So it could be there's a lot of things in today's world, not just homosexuality. There's different genders now. There's different types of sexualities. People choose different things. But this is where we know it started from. So we're going to go through how this story basically went. So Lot's message. What was Lot's message? So he wasn't just sent to people who were practicing the act of homosexuality, but these people were in the worst of evils. They used to loot people, rob people, and for their own desires, not just with consent, but they used to forcefully, subject themselves onto other people. It was at the height of these crimes and sins that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala revealed to Prophet Lut that he should summon the people to give up their indecent behavior. But they were so deeply sunk in their immoral habits that they were deaf to Lot's preaching. So after Lut alayhi salam left with Ibrahim alayhi salam, he settled in this land, Sodom, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala basically sent Prophet Lut to these people. What we know is that Lut alayhi salam married and then had two daughters, and we're going to talk about that later on as well. So he was sent to these people because they were the worst of people. They were very corrupt, and Lut alayhi salam started preaching to them. It was something that had never been heard of before. It was something that was so new. So Lut alayhi salam's job was a bit tougher in that sense. Swamped in their unnatural desires, they refused to listen, even when Lot warned them of Allah's punishment. Instead, they threatened to drive him out of the city if he kept on preaching. Because Lut al-Islam came to these people, he was part of their brethren, basically. But once he started preaching to these people, they said, if you do not stop, we will basically throw you out of the city. And not just that, but Lut al-Islam, it wasn't just a one-day thing. He lived amongst these people, and then he started preaching to these people after he saw what they were doing. And these people basically used to say, they used to mock Lut alayhi salam by saying, oh, you think you're so pure, you think you don't have any desires, you think you're better than us because you don't follow what we follow. And because it was so common among these people, basically, they used to think that there was something wrong with these people, Lut alayhi salam and his family, that weren't following what they were following. So in the Quran, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala talks about Lut alayhi salam's people. The people of Lot, those dwelt in the towns of Sodom in Palestine, belied the messengers when their brother Lot said to them, will you not fear Allah and obey him? Verily, I am a trustworthy messenger to you. So fear Allah, keep your duty to him and obey him. No reward do I ask of you for it, my message of Islamic monotheism. My reward is only from the Lord of the Alameen, mankind, jinn, and all that exists. Go you in. Okay, so we'll stop here. Okay, so if you notice, this message that Lut alayhi salam started with was very similar to that of the messenger. To that of the messengers that came before him, because he also said, I am a trustworthy messenger, and I am simply here to guide you to the straight path, and I do not want any reward in return. And this was the case with all prophets and messengers. Basically, they didn't want any material goods or worldly favors in return of the message that he was giving them, but only for these people to leave their sins and follow the path of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So then Lut alayhi salam becomes direct, and he directly counters basically the sin that these people were indulged in. Go you in unto the males of the Alameen, mankind, and leave those whom Allah has created for you to be your wives. Nay, you are a trespassing people. So now he directly confronts them. He says, do you go to men when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala made women for you? Because we know from Adam alayhi salam that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created men for women and women for men, so that they find tranquility and peace in. Basically, they go to their to the opposite gender for their desires, but these people were not following that. So that's why they used Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala used the word Lut al-Islam used the word trespassing people, or in some other places you see the word transgress. So basically anyone who transgress means this person's going against what's normal or natural for them. So these were the people who were transgressors. So then these people replied, they said, if you cease not, O Lot, verily you will be one of those who are driven out. So basically they threatened to basically kick him out of the town, basically. He said, I am indeed of those who disapprove the severe anger, with severe anger and fury your this evil action of sodomy. My Lord, save me and my family from what they do. So Lut alayhi salam, or Lot, basically this wasn't a one-day incident. He kept going to them and stopping them, but they didn't listen to Lut alayhi salam, and they were, as I told you, these people had no moral sense, and these people were basically, they were very aggressive as well. So when Lut al-Islam kept going to them with his message, they kept threatening him. So Lut al-Islam clearly separated himself from these people by saying, I disapprove of what you guys are doing. I am not part of it. And I'm very angry with what you are doing. So I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to save me and my family from what you do, because I do not want to be included or be seen as part of it. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, so we saved him and his family, all except an old woman, this wife, or his wife, among those who remained behind. So basically, we know that one of the people from Lut alayhi salam's family was of the people that were destroyed or punished. So Lut alayhi salam married, and then he had two daughters. So his two daughters were obviously, they accepted Islam, they listened to the message, and they weren't involved in this act. But his wife, even though she wasn't part of it, even though she wasn't practicing homosexuality, but she was someone who would advocate for it, or someone who would be part of it, or who didn't see any wrong in that. And she was someone who went against Lut alayhi salam and in favor of these people. And she didn't just support it, but later we'll find out how she encouraged it, and she made matters worse for Lut alayhi salam. Um, so from her example, we see that, even in today's time, being passive and being okay with something that's clearly forbidden is also not a way to go. Basically, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala guides us to speak up against something evil. If you can stop it, try to stop it with force. If you can't do that, try speaking up against it. If you can't do that, the minimum that you can do would be to find it wrong in your heart. So basically, knowing that that's wrong. If you're living in a society where you can't do anything about it, just knowing that that's wrong is part of your iman. You're still a believer, or you're still doing something about it, because you know that you're not going to be part of it. But someone who's just passive and who says, who cares, it's their matter, I don't want to get involved in it. If they're doing it, they're doing it to themselves. It's a private matter. We can't be, as Muslims, we can't be people who are just idly sitting by, or just bystanders when there's something wrong going on in our society. The minimum that we can do, if there's no other option, is find that wrong in our hearts. Okay, so the doings of Lot's people saddened his heart. Their unwholesome reputation spread throughout the land while he struggled against them. So people knew started finding out about these people. Like they were doing something that nobody had ever heard of. It was so unusual and unnatural that people couldn't believe it. As the years passed, he persisted in his mission, but to no avail. No one responded to his call and believed except for the members of his family. And even in his household, not all the members believed. Lot's wife, like Noah's wife, was a disbeliever. So we know from Nuh alayhi salam, or Noah's story, that his son and his wife were one of the disbelievers, and they were basically drowned in the storm or the hurricane. Sorry. Okay, so basically, okay. So she was one of those people. And from this, we know that even in a prophet's family, or someone who's very pious, even in their family, no matter how hard you try, it's up to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to give them guidance. What you can do is you can try. The story that we talked about before this one was Ibrahim alayhi salam story. And we know that his father himself was one of the people who used to create statues or idols, and he would go to temples and put those idols there, and then people would pray to these idols. So even in his family were people that didn't accept his message, but then we know that there are prophets whose brothers or sons or wives would follow them, and no matter what the hardship would be, they would still stick to Allah's message. We're going to talk about more prophets in in the other classes. One of them would be, there's a really good example in Moses' story, or Musa alayhi salam story, where Pharaoh's wife was someone who was on the right path, or Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave her guidance. So this just gives us more, just this just broadens our perspective. Like, we should be trying our best to spread the word of Allah, to spread the right message, regardless of who listens or doesn't. Because even in Lut al-Islam story, we know that nobody listened but his own daughters. And even in Nuh alayhi salam story, only a handful of people, listened to him. Or Ibrahim alayhi salam story, where Lut alayhi salam and Sarah, his wife, were the ones who believed. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentioned this in the Quran. Allah the Almighty declared, Allah set forth an example for those who disbelieve. The wife of Noah and the wife of Lot. So these were the two women that did not believe, even though the message of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala started spreading from their own houses. They were under two of our righteous slaves, but they both betrayed their husbands by rejecting their doctrines. So they, Noah and Lut, benefited them, their respective wives, not against Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And it was said, enter the fire along with those who enter. So what did Lut alayhi salam's wife do that was so horrible? We're going to find out later on. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, after a really long time, when Lut alayhi salam had given up, he was really tired of these people. They wouldn't listen. They were still robbing other people. They were aggressive. They were looting. They were into this act of homosexuality. Lut alayhi salam separated himself from these people and his family. And he said, I give up. I can't, you know, keep spreading this message, and for you guys to threaten me over and over again. And he prayed to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and he was very angry with these people too. So then, I think we've talked about this before. When angels come to a certain people who keep on rejecting Allah's message, and who keep on, I'm sorry. Sister Hajar, can you admit people who are joining this meeting? Okay. So we know when angels are sent after a prophet has been mocked and teased and rejected over and over again, we know that when angels come, they come with the punishment. And this was the same case, but this had been a little different, because when the angels came to these people, they didn't seem like angels. They came looking like human beings. So this is how the story goes. If home is the place of comfort and rest, then Lut found none, for he was tormented both inside and outside his home. His life was continuous torture, and he suffered greatly, but he remained patient and steadfast with his people. Imagine, he struggled for years, but in the end, he only you know he was mistreated. He only got mistreatment, and only two people, even in his family, only two people believed. The years rolled by, and still not one believed in him. Instead, they belittled his message and mockingly challenged him. Bring Allah's torment upon us if you are one of the truthful. So now they weren't just rejecting the message, they were challenging Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to bring on his punishment, because they were so indulged in this sin that they forgot who they were challenging. Overwhelmed with despair, Lot prayed to Allah to grant him victory and destroy the corrupt. Therefore, the angels left Ibrahim, peace be upon him, and headed for Sodom, the town of Lut salam. They reached the walls of the town in the afternoon. So, as soon as these angels, so there was Jibreel salam, um, and there was another angel that came to these people. And in the Quran, we know that they first went to Ibrahim alayhi salam, but they went to him to give him a glad tiding, basically a blessing, to inform him of a blessing, and we'll talk about that later as well. And then they came to the people of Lut alayhi salam with punishment. And as soon as they were going to enter this city, at the walls of this town, the first person who caught sight of them was Lot's daughter, who was sitting beside the river, filling her jug with water. So in other narrations, we know both of his daughters were sitting at the at the river, filling up their jugs of water when they saw the angels enter. They didn't know they were angels. They seemed they appeared to be human. When she lifted her face and saw them, she was stunned that there could be men of such magnificent beauty on earth. So they didn't get scared that these were angels and they were coming with the punishment, but instead they were worried because these angels appear to be very, very beautiful men. So when Lot's daughters saw these angels enter the city, they were scared that the people would see these angels or travelers or guests and would want to do something wrong to them, because again, these were aggressive people. With or without consent, they would force themselves upon other men. One of the three men angels asked her, "O maiden, is there a place to rest?" Remembering the character of her people, she replied, "Stay here and do not enter until I inform my father and return." Leaving her jug by the river, she swiftly ran home. "O father," she cried, "you are wanted by young men at the town gate, and I have never before seen the like of their faces." So she mentioned she was scared, and she sort of hinted to Lut alayhi salam, that these men are beautiful, and I am afraid something might happen. So quickly go to these men and receive them. Lot felt distressed as he quickly ran to his guests. He asked them where they came from and where they were going. So even Lut al-Islam did not know these were angels, but he was still fearful because they were guests. And as a prophet, he couldn't send them away. So in he tried really hard, to give them sort of a sign or a message to not enter the city, because he was afraid of what would happen to these people, because he didn't know they were angels. He thought these were just very beautiful men. They did not answer his questions. Instead, they asked if he could host them. He started talking with them and impressed upon them the subject of his people's nature. So he was hinting towards, how these people were, but the angels did not listen. Lot was filled with turmoil. He wanted to convince his guests without offending them to not spend the night there. Yet at the same time, he wanted to extend to them the expected hospitality normally accorded to guests. Because as a prophet, he was supposed to meet them with hospitality and kindness and welcome them. But this was no place to, invite guests to, especially guests that beautiful. In vain, he tried to make them understand the perilous situation. So it was very dangerous for them to enter the city. So alas, therefore, he requested them to wait until the night fell, for then no one would see them. So he decided to have these guests, wait by the walls of the city, hidden so that nobody could see them. And then when it was dark at night, he could sneak them inside his home, and then have basically these guests stay over and then leave without anyone noticing. When darkness fell on the town, Lot escorted his guests to his home. No one was aware of their presence. However, as soon as Lot's wife saw them, she slipped out of the house quietly so that no one noticed her. So not only was she on, on the other side, she was not only was she with the disbelievers, but she actually plotted against, Lut alayhi salam, or she went against Lut alayhi salam to, you know, let these other people know that, Lut alayhi salam was hiding someone. Quickly, she ran to her people with the news, and it spread to all the inhabitants like wildfire. The people rushed towards Lot quickly and excitedly. Lot was surprised by their discovery of his guests, and he wondered who could have informed them. The matter became clear. However, when he could not find his wife anywhere, thus adding to his sorrow. So he was also sad because now he can't find his wife, and these people are rushing to his house, and he knew in his heart, he knew which member of his family would have informed these people. When Lot saw the mob approaching his house, he shut the door, but they kept on banging on it because, again, I keep emphasizing these were very aggressive people. They had no morality. Basically, they just acted upon their desire. He pleaded with them to leave the visitors alone and fear Allah's punishment. So, a lot of this is a very hard subject to talk about. But I'll try my best. Okay. So these people, they weren't just here to see the guests. Nauzubillah, these people were here to actually rape men. And that's why they were being so aggressive. They would try to barge into the house and basically pull these three guests out who were, angels. They didn't know that, but and do as they will, basically, and act upon their desire. And Lut al-Islam was just one man, and he had two daughters, so he couldn't basically stop these people, and he kept trying to convince these people with his words. He urged them to seek sexual fulfillment with their wives. So basically, Lut Islam kept telling them to go back, go back to your women, to go back to your houses. These aren't people for you, these are guests. So for that, it is what Allah had made lawful. Basically, he kept telling them to follow the natural order. Don't come to my house for these guests. They aren't for you. These people are here as guests. They're just going to stay over and then go. They, don't include them in your basically weird culture that was going on there. Lot's people waited until he had finished his short sermon, and when they roared with and then they roared with laughter. Blinded by passion, they broke down the door. Lot became very angry, but he stood powerless before these violent people. He was he was unable to prevent the abuse of his guests, but he firm stoodly his ground and continued to plead with the mob. So, these people were almost like animals. These people had no shame in going into someone's house, abusing and harassing their guests, because they were so how it said, blinded by passion. They only wanted one thing, that was their desires to be fulfilled. So then what happened? The punishment. At that terrible moment, he wished he had power to push them away from his guests. Seeing him in a state of helplessness and grief, the guests said, "Do not be anxious or frightened, Lot, we are angels, and these people will not harm you." So now the angels revealed themselves, and they said this was a test and the last of it, and we were sent as punishment. And these people, they have transgressed, to a limit where there is no return, and now Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is going to punish them. On hearing this, the mob was terrified and fled from Lot's house, hurling threats at him as they left. So why were they hurling threats? There's another narration in basically in tafsir, or in more description when we know about this story. What happened was, these people came in, and they were trying to get to the angels, and Lut alayhi salam was in between these guests, basically the angels and the people. And then the angels revealed themselves to the angels, and they said, don't worry about us, we're angels, we're gonna protect, these people can't harm us or you. And then the angels, so there's two basically narrations that we have on this, basically two accounts that we know of. It's either Jibreel alayhi salam poked their eyes with his feather, which blinded them, or he basically blew something at them that temporarily blinded these people. And as soon as these people were blinded, it was a miracle. Basically, they were blinded temporarily. They said, Lut alayhi salam, nauzubillah, he did he did black magic, or he did magic on us, that's why we can't see. And they were very angry, and then they returned, basically, because they were powerless at this point. The angels warned Prophet Lut to leave his house before sunrise. So basically, the angels then told Lut alayhi salam to take his family and, you know, go to another city, leave the city of Sodom and Gomorrah, and don't look back. They especially told Lut alayhi salam to not look back. Uh, where is it? Hmm. On hearing this, the mob was fearful. Okay, the angels warned Prophet Lut to leave his house before sunrise, taking with him all his family except his wife. Allah had decreed that the city of Sodom should perish. An earthquake rocked the town. It was as if the mighty power had lifted the entire city and flung it down in one jolt. A storm of stones rained on the city. Everyone and everything was destroyed, including Lot's wife. So what happened was Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala basically ordered Jibreel alayhi salam to lift up the town. And in some narrations, they say it was so high. He lifted it up so high that it was almost that it touched the sky. And then he flipped the city over, and just slammed it on the ground, basically. And everything was destroyed in that earthquake, basically. And if you actually do some research on it, you could see how there's like a stone or clay statue by the Dead Sea, where you could see Lot's wife's you know remains, or they say it's just a statue, as reminder that she was someone who wasn't also directly involved in that act, but she was someone who supported it. So that is something that is for us to look at, and fear Allah, that even if you're not uh, involved in an act, but just supporting it or just passively sitting by and letting that happen is something that is also punishable. Okay, how do I change? Okay. So I told you that before coming to Lut alayhi salam, the angels met Ibrahim alayhi salam, and this is in the Quran as well. This is how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us, or Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, how that happened, and what Ibrahim alayhi salam said when he saw these angels going towards Lut alayhi salam. So this was before these people were destroyed. Allah the Almighty recounted this story and tell them about the guest angels of Abraham. When they entered unto him and said, Salam and peace, Abraham said, Indeed, we are afraid of you, because he thought, these angels came to him to punish his people. They, the angels, said, Do not be afraid. We give you glad tidings of a boy, son, possessing much knowledge and wisdom. So this was the news for Prophet Ishaq alayhi salam, and then his son Yaqub alayhi salam, which we are going to talk about later. So Ibrahim alayhi salam had two sons. One's name was Ishaq, and the other's name was Ismail. And then Ishaq alayhi salam had a son named Yaqub. Yaqub had a son named Yusuf, and We're going to talk about their stories in the other classes, but this was when the angels basically announced or told Ibrahim alayhi salam that he was going to have a boy with knowledge and wisdom, and then his coming generation would have prophets too. Abraham said, "Do you give me glad tidings of a son when old age has overtaken me? Of what then is your news?" The angel said, "We give you glad tidings in truth, so be not of the despairing." So this is what we know of Ibrahim alayhi salam. When he was given the news of his son, Ishaq alayhi salam, he said, "How can I have a son when I'm this old? I can't have a son, at this age." And even his wife came and said, "How am I going to have a son when I'm old now? Old age has struck me." But the angel said, "It's a miracle by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and He's giving you this blessing. So accept it. It's going to happen, and we only give you the truth. We aren't fooling you." Abraham said, "And who despairs the mercy of his Lord except those who are astray?" So Ibrahim and Islam accepted that, and he didn't question it any further. "What then is the business on which you have come, O messengers?" So this is Ibrahim and Islam talking to the angels. Because when Ibrahim alayhi salam saw these angels going towards Lut alayhi salam's people, towards the city of Sodom or Sodom, Ibrahim alayhi salam was a little worried, because he knew that he gave the angels gave him good news, but now they're going towards another people, and he knew, because how I said the people of Sodom and Gomorrah, they're acts of evil, everybody knew around. So Ibrahim alayhi salam was a little worried, that he knew these people were someone who were uh, involved in evil sins, and he knew, like, if the angels are going towards these people, it can't be good news. The angel said, "We have been sent to a people who are mujrimeen," which means criminals, disbelievers, polytheists, and sinners, "all except the family of Lot. Them all we are surely going to save from destruction, except his wife, of whom we have decreed that she shall be of those who remain behind. She will be destroyed." So Ibrahim alayhi salam, remember, Lut alayhi salam was someone who left with Ibrahim alayhi salam. He was one of the people who accepted his message, and he was also related to Ibrahim alayhi salam. So Ibrahim alayhi salam was worried for Lut alayhi salam, and the angel sensed that, and he said, Lut alayhi salam will be fine. We'll send him and his family, but his wife is one of the disbelievers, so she shall not be saved. Then when the messengers, the angels, came unto the family of Lot, he said, "Verily you are people unknown to me." They said, "Nay, we have come to you with that torment which they have been doubting. And we have brought to you the truth, the news of the destruction of your nature. And certainly we tell the truth. Then travel in a part of the night with your family, and you go behind them in the rear, and let no one amongst you look back, but go on to where you are ordered." So Lut alayhi salam left, and he did not look back as he was told. "And we made known this decree to him, that the root of those sinners was to be cut off in the early morning. The inhabitants of the city came rejoicing at the news of the young men's arrival." This is the story in the Quran that we know of. Okay. Lot said, "Verily these are my guests, so shame me not, and fear Allah and disgrace me not." The people of the city said, "Did we not forbid you to entertain or protect any of the Alameen people?" Basically, Alameen is a word for people. "From us," Lot said, "These, the girls of the nation, are my daughters to marry lawfully, if you must act so." So in the Quran, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions when these people were going towards these angels, Lut alayhi salam, when he said, "I offer you my daughters," he didn't mean that he offers his literal daughters to these people. He says the word daughters is used for the women of the nation, of the women of the city. He said, "I offer you the women of these nation, your wives, the people, the women, that you might find attractive, or that might fulfill your desire, but these people weren't interested in that, and they also made fun of Lut al-Islam by laughing at him and saying, you why are you acting so naive? We want nothing to do with women, we just want what we want. Verily, by your life, O Muhammad, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is talking to Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wasallam. Verily, by your life, Muhammad, in their wild intoxication, they were wandering blindly. So as Saliha, torment, awful cry overtook them at the sunrise, at the time of sunrise, and we turned the towns of Sodom in Palestine upside down and rained onto them stones of baked clay. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is describing how these people were destroyed. How this city was flipped over, and also how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala rained down stones upon these people. Surely in this are signs for those who see or understand or learn the lessons from the signs of Allah. And verily the cities are right on the high road from Makkah to Syria, the place where the Dead Sea is now. Surely therein is indeed a sign of for the disbelievers. So these cities, Sodom or Gomorrah, they were destroyed, but they are to be known somewhere in present day Israel and Palestine. Basically, Israel was previously Palestine, but it is now known as present day Israel near the Dead Sea. Allah the Exalted also declared, so we saved him and his family, all except an old woman, his wife, among those who remained behind. Then afterward we destroyed the others. We rained on them a rain of torment. How evil was the rain of those who had been warned. Verily in this is Verily in this is indeed a sign, yet most of them are not believers. Ver- Verily your Lord, He is indeed the Almighty, the most merciful. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala repeats this incident of how He destroyed these people multiple times in the Quran and various ayahs. Okay, so what was Lut alayhi salam's life after he left Sodom or Sodom? The book was closed on the people of Lot. So the book was closed means their destinies were all written. Everything was closed. There was no one who was left behind. Everyone was perished, and this was the fate of these people. So the book was closed means their story ended there. So this was the people of Lut alayhi salam, the people of Sodom and Gomorrah. Their towns and names have been erased from the face of the earth. Gone are they from memory. One book was closed of the people of the books of corruption. Lot proceeded towards Abraham. He visited him, and when he recounted the story of his people, he was surprised to learn that Abraham already knew. So Lut continued to invite people to Allah. As did Ibrahim, the patient one who turned to Allah repentantly, and the two held firm on their mission. Okay, so this was the story of Lut alayhi salam. So now, after this story, a lot of people basically take out their own accounts of what happened. And a lot of people basically try to change the story according and make it more digestible in a way. So a lot of people in today's world, a lot of even Muslims, basically say that it wasn't homosexuality that was questioned, or that was basically these people were punished for, but it was the culture of rape basically, and how these people were coming towards the angels to harass or sexually abuse them. That was something that they were punished for, not for having not just homosexual desires, but indulging in those acts. And, when we accept Islam and when we're practicing Islam and we follow Allah's word and when we go through these accounts in the Quran, we know that, we can't cut this story in pieces and try to make it fit to our own basically logic or something that we believe in or our own beliefs and make it digestible, because it is what it is. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has forbidden homosexuality, and that is it. We can't make it seem like it's okay or justify it and say, it wasn't something that was prohibited or forbidden. It was rape that was forbidden. So I found a really nice argument on this, and I wanted to share it with you guys, and then we can maybe have a discussion about it afterwards. So a lot of modern day basically speakers and intellectuals try to say, LGBT is, the culture itself is not haram, and it's just, from Lut Islam's story, we know that it's just rape that was spoken against.
People today have reinterpreted the traditional Islamic understanding around homosexuality and rulings to do with homosexual acts.
The story of Sodom and Gomorrah is a story about a town that was doing horrible acts of rape, acts of incest, not a condemnation of same-gender loving relationships.
It wasn't homosexuality that these people were involved in, it was acts of rape.
How is this aggressive sexual assault in any way or form analogous to the legitimate human need for intimacy, affection, and companionship for LGBTQ Muslims? There is absolutely no connection, there is absolutely no analogy here.
Can we elaborate on this in light of the conversation?
Yeah, so this is another example where you have certain people who have already accepted a certain preset notion, ID. And then they come to the Quran and Sunnah with that framework, with their ID, and they try to place that ID into the Quran, rather than actually taking the Quran for what it is. The Quran itself says, what does the Quran say? The Quran says, Lut was speaking to his people. And he says to his people, إِنَّكُمْ لَتَأْتُونَ الرِّجَالَ شَهْوَةً مِّن دُونِ النِّسَاءِ. Verily you people, you go to males out of lust rather than going to females. So the general argument that is made by these people who want to reinterpret this verse, they say that this verse is referring to rape, that these men were going to other men and raping them.
It wasn't homosexuality that these people were involved in, it was acts of rape.
This is their reinterpretation. We can clearly see that if it's saying that men shouldn't be raping other men, but the rest of the verse says that you go to males out of lust instead of out of females. So if it is not okay to rape men, then does it become okay to rape women?
Of course not.
According to their reinterpretation, if you follow their logic, then it should be allowed to rape women, which is definitely not the case. So there's something there that is allowed between a male and a female, which isn't allowed between a male and another male. So it can't be rape, because rape isn't allowed between a male and a female. So these type of arguments, you can clearly see that they have preset notions, preconceived ideas. And I want to make and stress the point that what we are talking about here, when we criticize or when the verse criticizes males going to another male, what we're criticizing is not your orientation, your sexual orientation. Rather, we are criticizing you acting upon that sexual orientation in any way. Islam, the Quran, our tradition, without any difference of opinion, has agreed upon that you acting upon your sexual orientation, the actual act of going to another male out of lust, are forbidden, without any disagreement. As for the orientation in and of itself, because it's involuntary, then the Sharia has nothing to say. It is not forbidden. It's something out of your control, and you as a person needs to control this inclination.
People today.
Okay. So basically, why I shared that video with you guys was to sort of reiterate that we can't take out interpretations that fit our own ideas and our own basically sort of thoughts and what we believe in, but take it as it is, that homosexuality is forbidden and we can't support it. We can't speak for it. We cannot in any way justify it. There's another thing, how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, does not punish a person based on just the desire or the thoughts or the feelings that they have. So if someone has tendencies towards it, or someone has these thoughts that they cannot control, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does not punish you on the thought, but acting upon those thoughts and those desires and openly doing so and advocating for it is something that is forbidden. And same as this sin, a lot of other sins, if you're not doing, if you just have, so basically if you have evil thoughts, if you have uh, thoughts that lead you to haram acts, just those thoughts aren't punishable. Even Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says to the angels that, do not write the sin until this person commits the sin. So you're not punished on that, but when you start to follow it, when you act upon it, that's when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala holds you accountable. So if anyone wants to unmute, because I see it's time, it's 4. If anyone wants to unmute, share something, we shall take in, the discussions or the points. And if you have any questions, we can answer them. But if not, we'll just have the dua and wrap up the class. If you have anything that you don't want to say on the mic and just want to write in the chat, you can do that as well. Okay, I don't think anyone has anything to say. I'll just quickly check the chat as well. Okay. Jazakallah. Okay, so we'll just have the dua now. And then if you have anything, we'll just take that in. Okay. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك نشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت نستغفرك ونتوب إليك. والعصر إن الإنسان لفي خسر إلا الذين آمنوا وعملوا الصالحات وتواصوا بالحق وتواصوا بالصبر. Jazakallah sisters for joining, and Jazakallah for listening. I'll stop the recording now and we'll end the meeting soon.